Happy Halloween, bitches! Welcome to Beauties and Beasts, the podcast of all things Beauty and the Beast. I'm your host, DF, and yes, I'm cussing today because today's topic is rated R for violence, gore, and sex. Leave now, kids. This episode is not for you. And you know, I'm going to turn the music off because people have been telling me that's too loud. Unfortunately, I cannot lower it anymore, so I guess we just leave it for intros. So, everyone's got their favorite slasher film franchise, from Halloween to Nightmare on Elm Street to Scream. My personal favorite is the Child's Play or Chucky franchise. Not because I find Chucky scary, but fucking hilarious. But don't get me wrong, it can get pretty freaky at times. Starting from 1988, there are now 7 movies in the franchise and a spin-off TV series which just premiered on the Sci-Fi Channel last week. I had just actually watched the first episode yesterday, and let me tell you, it is amazing. And there was also one remake in 2019 featuring Mark Hamill as the voice of Chucky, which we're not talking about. I mean, it's not totally bad, but it's a completely different universe. The premise of the franchise is of a serial killer named Charles Lee Ray who is gunned down in a toy store, but before he dies, he uses an amulet called the Heart of Damballa after the voodoo sky god to transfer his soul into a good guy doll named Chucky. I know, right? Sounds weird. The twist is he's a killer. The first 3 movies, Chucky tries and fails to kill the boy Andy he's gifted to. No, this isn't Toy Story, though this is where they got the name Andy. And to get his soul into a human body. See, if he's in the doll's body for too long, it becomes more human, like it can bleed and develop organs. But our main focus in today's episode is the 4th installment of this franchise, Bride of Chucky, in which we are introduced to Chucky's serial killer soulmate, Tiffany. A Bonnie and Clyde type relationship that's really unhealthy, but somehow makes it through half the franchise. Before I get into this, I'd like to thank my $5 plus patrons, Arvin Joshua Rocks 15, Bella Pink Savage, Cosmic Trail, Nala X Simba, and Tyrannosaurus Venom for their continuing support. You too can become a patron and join these private streams. Just go to patreon.podbean.com/beautiesandbeasts. Also, buy my merchandise on redbubble.com. I've got brand new Halloween merch and LGBTQ merch. Just go to disneyfanatic23.redbubble.com. Also, check out my new original story, The Smile of Helen Donnie, published in the Haunted MTL's LGBTQ horror anthology. Now available on Amazon. Proceeds will be donated to LGBTQ charities. Alright, if you are not familiar with the Chucky franchise, a spoiler warning is in order. And so, here's a creepy laugh to tell you to turn away. So, it's 1998, 10 years since Charles Lee Ray's death and resurrection, and the mysterious doll murders. The movie opens at a police depository where all the creepy Universal monster movie props are kept. No, seriously, Jason's mask, Michael Myers' mask, this scene is full of Easter eggs. Or should I say, Halloween eggs. A cop steals evidence and goes out in the rain to meet a buyer who calls him with a warning that curiosity killed the cat. So, while the cop waits in his car for the buyer, he dares to peek into the evidence bag. The next thing he knows, his throat is slit by Jennifer Tilly in her hottest, baddest role as Tiffany, Charles Lee Ray's old girlfriend, who steals the remains of the Chucky doll after he got blown up in Child's Play 3. Tiffany takes the broken Chucky doll back to her trailer home and uses her collection of doll parts, stitches him back together, like Frankenstein's monster. Meanwhile, across town, David Collins is picking up the police chief Warren Kincaid's niece, Jade, for the prom. The chief is suspicious of his niece's date, as he's giving off stereotypical gay vibes with his figure skating scholarship and theater arts major and knowledge of flowers. You know, not too far off, as I've worked with plenty of gay guys in the theater. Turns out the chief's gaydar is on point, as David has Jade's actual boyfriend, Jesse, stowed away in his car, and he was just helping to fool the chief so that they could go on a date together. But the chief is one step ahead of the teens and sends one of his officers to pull them over for no reason whatsoever except to mess with them. See, the chief doesn't approve of Jesse because, I don't know, he lives in a van, and the chief is very controlling over his niece. Back at Tiffany's place, our leading ladies reading up on voodoo for dummies, performing a ritual to bring Chucky's soul back into the doll using that iconic chant. Ahem. Ade due dambela, ade due dambela, give me the power, I beg of you, and a bunch of other French words. Honestly, it's very long. When Chucky doesn't wake up, Tiffany assumes that the spell is just a dud. I mean, you gotta add a voodoo for dummies. Then in walks her current boy toy, Damien, who's trying to impress her with a photo of his latest killing, which is really just him in Hollywood makeup. Yeah, hard to appeal to someone's murder kink. I mean, all the work you have to go through. Tiffany then notices that the doll is missing from the pentagram where she had left him, and then finds him in another spot. With a glint of mischief, she lures Damien to her bed, places Chucky on top of him, and does a sexy dance explaining how she and Charles Lee Ray lived together for years and would kill anybody who so much as looked at her. Damien thinks she's playing around until the doll wakes up, slits his throat with his own lip ring, and smothers him with a pillow. And then Chucky turns to Tiffany and says, "Hey, how you been? Have you been?" Like he didn't just kill someone in front of her. He demands what she's doing with this guy, and she says, "Well, you know me, Chucky. I'd kill anybody, but will only sleep with someone I love." So, our reunited evil lovebirds do some catching up. Tiffany shows Chucky the crib she got for the nursery, and Chucky is like, "Wait, what?" And Tiffany goes on about how she still has the engagement ring that she found in his things the night he was killed. Turns out it was a ring that Chucky had pulled off of one of his victims, and he was going to pawn it off. "So, you weren't gonna propose? You kidding me?" And Tiffany realizes she had gone through all that trouble for nothing. "You never changed, Chucky. Mother said love will set you free, but I've been a prisoner of your love for a long time." And Chucky's like, "Whatever. First thing we gotta do is get me out of this body." But Tiffany decides she prefers him this way. He's like a little baby. And so she locks him in the crib. And Chucky's like, "All right, we'll get hitched." Tiffany's like, "Nah, I'm not into short guys." "Yeah, damn girl, stand up for yourself." And then Tiffany cries in her bed next to dead Damien. Oh, poor girl. She kills a bunch of people and performs a dangerous voodoo ritual and to get this guy back into her life, and he treats her like garbage. You know, supernatural shit aside, these two aren't that different from Harley Quinn and Joker. In the morning, Tiffany asks her neighbor Jesse, yeah, you remember the guy who was dating the chief's niece? Yep, I mentioned those characters for a reason. They weren't just a random thing. To help her move a trunk with Damien's body into her car. And because he's super muscular, she flirts with him. Fucking cougar. Well, I guess he is technically a legal adult. But loyal Jesse declines and says that he's seeing someone. Instead of being upset at the rejection, Tiffany gives him some advice to treat his girl right and don't take her for granted. That her mother used to say, if a woman has to slave all day over a hot stove for her man, the least he can do is clean the dishes. Solid advice, actually. Husbands with stay-at-home wives out there, take this to heart, okay? Tiffany returns to Chucky and decides there should be a wedding. And she gives him a lovely bride doll to spite him. That night, Tiffany takes a bubble bath while watching Bride of Frankenstein. Hey, didn't I analyze that movie a couple of Halloweens ago? Well, if you listen to that episode, then you'll probably know what's coming. Chucky escapes the crib using the engagement ring to saw through the bars. He jumps on Tiffany with a knife, resulting in a struggle, leading to the TV falling in the bath with Tiffany in it. Science question, kids. What happens when you drop a TV into a tub of water? Electrocution! That's right! That is correct. Sorry, delay reaction on that sound effect. Chucky then uses the voodoo spell to transfer Tiffany's soul into the bride. Ade due dumbala, ade due dumbala. Give me the power, I beg of you. Tiffany got what she wanted. The two of them are together forever. But of course, she ain't happy about it. I mean, he did just kill her and then force her into this doll body. But now, Tiffany has to help Chucky find a body to possess because, she's got the same problem. Has no choice. To do that, Chucky needs the Heart of Damballa, the voodoo amulet he wore on the night he died. Unfortunately, it was buried with his body in a cemetery in New Jersey. And since dolls can't drive, they're gonna need help. So after Tiffany gives her new doll form a makeover to look more like her badass self, which Chucky thinks is hot, she calls Jesse for a favor. That she'll give him $500 to deliver 2 very special dolls to a friend in Jersey. Thinking about Jade and how he wants to provide for her, Jesse asks for $1,000. $500 now, $500 upon delivery. Jesse picks up the unsuspecting dolls and the money, stops by Jade's house, and asks her to elope with him. Tiffany thinks it's romantic. Chucky wants to barf. But hey, now they got 2 young, perfectly healthy human bodies to possess later on. As Jade and Jesse go to get her things, the uncle breaks into the van to plant some drugs. As this'll, ruin their plans, Chucky whips out his knife, but Tiffany insists that he be more creative, and so she flings a horde of nails into Warren's face. Yeah. They stash the body into the back seat before the forbidden lovers can return. Jesse and Jade are eventually pulled over by an officer. Jade, in a rage, punches him because, he's just working for her uncle and not doing this to keep the peace. But Jesse calms her down and tells her to go grab some snacks from the nearby stand. The officer finds the drug bag planted by the chief. The cop calls for the chief on the radio in his car. Chucky sneaks out and blows up the police car with the cop in it. The people who'd witnessed the whole thing think Jesse and Jade were responsible, so the couple hightails it out of there. And because they weren't each other's alibi, they accuse each other of the murder. Their friend David calls saying that the police think they're responsible for the multiple murders, like Bonnie and Clyde. They found Tiffany's victims, by the way, and the chief is missing. Despite their growing mistrust, Jesse and Jade get married in a dinky little chapel. Meanwhile, in the van, Tiffany reminisces about how she'd always wanted a church wedding. And Chucky actually apologizes for everything that he did. Yeah, a little late for that. But Tiffany can't complain because she did want them to spend more time together and see the world. Nah. Oh yeah, and they have to kill the chief again because he apparently survived the nail attack. Yeah. Jesse and Jade's honeymoon suite is invaded by newlywed swingers who steal Tiffany's ring. So Tiffany gets back at them by breaking the mirror above the thieves' marriage waterbed, creating a sea of water and blood. And Chucky's response is, "I love you." Well, I mean, she's a killer too, and he's into that. Then he takes the ring off the dead woman's severed finger and puts it on Tiffany's plastic one. And then they have doll sex. Yeah, apparently voodoo makes them anatomically correct. Hey, if you think this movie's weird, wait till you see Seed of Chucky. Back to Jesse and Jade, they both called David saying the other has gone crazy and that they're scared. And so David comes over, plays the marriage counselor, and tells them that since they both blame each other and both called him for help, this is all just a big misunderstanding. And then he thinks the chief might have been behind the murder since he's the only one missing. Oh, David, the ultimate gay best friend. But then David finds the body of the chief in the back seat and, thinking he's been tricked, takes the chief's gun and demands that Jesse and Jade pull over. He backs out of the van. Chucky and Tiffany reveal themselves, whipping out their own guns, and David gets hit by a truck. And Chucky's like, that works too. No, not my sweet gay baby David. Of all the people who die in this movie, he deserves it the least. So now Chucky and Tiffany have Jesse and Jade hostage, and they ditch the van and kill a couple for their trailer. Tiffany cooks for Chucky, making him kind of like married life. And then Jesse sees the dirty dishes and decides to use Tiffany's earlier advice against her. Jesse casually comments to Chucky, "Not much of a housekeeper, is she?" So Chucky demands that she clean up, and Jade goes, "You were nice enough to cook for him. The least he can do is wash the dishes." Tiffany and Chucky then get into a fight, resulting in the trailer crashing into the cemetery and Tiffany getting burned in the oven. Chucky takes Jade hostage and forces her to get into his grave, which was already getting exhumed due to his fingerprints appearing at the crime scene, because apparently when you're a plastic doll, you still have the same fingerprints. Who knew? Gets her to open his coffin and get the amulet. Jesse holds a gun to Tiffany's head and exchanges her for Jade. Of course, now Chucky is a bit put off by Tiffany's charred body, and he throws his knife at the young lovers. Jesse takes it for Jade, but he's okay. Chucky is prepared to perform the ritual. Then Tiffany goes at his feet, saying that she loves him and that they belong together forever, and asks him to kiss her. As he does this, she swipes his knife and stabs him in the back and says the iconic line from Bride of Frankenstein, "We belong dead." But Chucky is still alive, and he gets into a duel with Tiffany, ending with Tiffany getting stabbed in the stomach and saying that love has set her free, and Chucky getting thrown into his own grave, just as a police detective shows up. Initially to arrest Jesse and Jade, but then sees the walking, talking killer doll. Jade points a gun at Chucky, and he says, "I'll be back. I always come back. But dying is such a bitch." And Jade shoots him next to his human corpse. The detective, knowing that nobody's going to believe this story, lets the kids go and tells his precinct that Jesse and Jade weren't behind the murders. He then finds the Tiffany doll in time for her to wake up and give birth to the seed of Chucky, to be continued in the next movie. Yeah, as weird as this movie is, it puts a whole twist on the Bride of Frankenstein trope. How the monster, who in this case is an actual monster and doesn't just look like one, creates a bride in his image, only for her to betray him in the end. I mean, unlike the Bride of Frankenstein, Tiffany did kind of want to be with Chucky, but when he took her for granted, then she decided, nope, this isn't worth it. And, I can't help but feel bad for Tiffany, because she does all this shit to get her man back, but he doesn't fully appreciate her. This isn't the end for these two, however, as they are brought back in the next movie thanks to the efforts of their child. Yeah, Seed of Chucky is a whole meta mess, with Tiffany wanting to take over the body of Jennifer Tilly, who's playing her in the movie adaptation of Their Crimes. Yeah, that's not even the weirdest part of this movie. I'd love to say if you intend to go on a Chucky binge, you can skip Seed of Chucky if the plot wasn't relevant to the later sequels, because it does explain how Tiffany makes it back into human form, but Chucky does not. He ultimately decides he likes being a creepy evil killer doll. He gets more shit done that way. And one thing worth noting of Seed of Chucky is that the supernaturally conceived doll child in question is intersex or bigender or something along those lines. You know, the movie doesn't really specify and calls them gender confused, but that's an outdated term. But Glen, or Glenda, has indeterminate genitalia, that much we do know, like most dolls, and says that they would like to be a boy and a girl, and gets their wish in being both by putting his dual identities into two newborn fraternal twins. Yeah. Although the girl's side is shown to be more violent, and it's kind of making it look like a dissociative disorder, so maybe not the best representation. I'm wondering if that's why they haven't appeared in the other two new movies. So, back to Chucky and Tiffany's relationship. Yeah, like the Harley Quinn and the Joker relationship, it's not the healthiest. There are times that Chucky is just straight out abusive towards Tiffany emotionally and physically, and even to his own child. And Tiffany tries again in Seed of Chucky to redeem herself with a 12-step program of all things in order to be a good mother for her child. Tiffany and Glen or Glenda end up becoming human after standing up to Chucky, but he always manages to come back. The next two films, Curse of Chucky and Cult of Chucky, Tiffany makes guest appearances, but we still don't know exactly what happened to Glen or Glenda. But we can assume something happened to get her back with Chucky, as Seed of Chucky did end with 5 or 6-year-old Glen getting a severed Chucky arm as a birthday present. But we know that they patched up the relationship somehow because she is aiding Chucky in his killings again. Maybe these plot holes will be explained in the new TV series, as Tiffany is in the promos. One point I will give this killer couple, with all their faults and all their turmoil and their weirdness, is that no matter what forms they take, it doesn't kill their attraction for each other. Not just with their doll forms. In Cult of Chucky, the movie ends with Chucky possessing a woman, and when he reunites with Tiffany and kisses her, he's like, "This is new," and Tiffany's like, "I don't mind. I guess gender is as much inconsequential to them as plastic." Yeah, the Chucky franchise is probably one of the gayest of slasher films, mainly to do with that the creator, not Don Mancini, is a gay man himself. I mean, the first official LGBTQ character in the series didn't show up until the fourth movie, but there are gay undertones in the first three. Think about it. The whole premise is of a guy trapped in the wrong body. Granted, he's a serial killer, but hey, this is horror. Pretty much everybody's a douchebag in the horror genre. And it just goes to show that some boys like to play with dolls. Doesn't necessarily mean they're gay, though. Well, at least Andy isn't. Which is why the backlash the new series has received on having a gay teen protagonist is bullshit. Homophobes saying, "Oh, Chucky is suddenly for the gays now. This show's just pretending to be woke. Like, they're just trying to be modern." Newsflash, Chucky's always been for the gays. It hasn't been hiding it for a really long time. The new show is worth watching, by the way. Everything we need in a Chucky spinoff. And, oh boy, the main character. I did not think of all things that I would be feeling such feels in the Chucky TV series. No, it is creepy at times. It still makes me laugh with Chucky's wisecracks. Yeah. No, why I gotta love that killer doll. He has the funniest lines. But I did not think I was gonna get so emotional. So, our ultimate takeaway from Chucky and Tiffany's relationship is not to take your partner for granted. If they do something for you, you've got to do something for them too. Not just about the dishes. And in a Beauty and the Beast sense, it's not about the body your partner's in, but their soul. And if changing their body will make them happy with themselves, you should be supportive of that. I am, of course, talking about sex change, not like getting a new nose job or something. So the franchise as a whole is bloody, funny, and true LGBTQ horror. And if you like LGBTQ horror, check out my new story, The Smile of Helen Donnie, in the anthology Queer as Hell on Amazon. Okay, and one more fun fact before we wrap up here. Though the story's made up, Chucky was inspired by a real-life haunted doll named Robert. Although he wasn't created through voodoo, but Santeria, another African conjuring tradition, and not possessed by a serial killer. He is still on display in the East Mortello Museum, but if you do see him, don't take his picture without permission, or he'll curse you, unless you write a letter of apology. And you may not believe it, but displayed behind the doll is a number of apology letters saying, "Robert, I'm sorry I took your picture without permission. Now please get rid of this curse. Happy Halloween!" Okay, so are there any questions in the chat? See, we've only got Bella Pink Savage today. If you want to join these private streams and add your 2 cents to the episode topics, then please become a patron of at least $10 a month. Just go to patron.podbean.com/beautiesandbeasts. And I can tell that Bella Pink Savage here has never really watched the Chucky franchise. Yeah, she says, until I actually get around to watching this, nothing makes sense anymore. I know. You know, it makes sense when you follow the whole movie franchise. Sort of. But yeah, Seed of Chucky, although it's cool that they had a little more LGBTQ representation there, the whole thing was weird. Even Chucky said so, like, no, this is weird, even for me. Yep. One thing about that movie, it's extremely self-aware. All right, so are there any questions left? Yeah, and Bella Pink Savage says, a bad acid trip is what this franchise sounds like. Not if you look at some of those movies as dark comedy. At least Bride of Chucky and Seed of Chucky. Alright, so for the next episode, we'll look at another unhealthy relationship in The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux and its many adaptations, including Andrew Lloyd Webber's musical. Okay, until next time, remember, treat your partner right, keep those dishes clean, and serial killers have feelings too. Wait, that can't be right.